All right, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of JNUC. I hope you had a great day yesterday with all the great content and the exciting stuff in the keynote. Today we have Getting to Know Your Macs extension attributes with Ernie Fulton from Fidelity National Financial. And just a quick note about the Q&A section, which we'll have at the end. We do have virtual attendees who are watching the streaming session, and they'll be asking questions on the JNUC app. You can do the same here in the room. If you want to write your notes or ask questions during the session, you can open up the JNUC app, find the session Q&A section, locate this session, and you can start submitting and upvoting questions during the session. We'll also try to get some in-person questions at the end as well. So have a great session, and Ernie, over to you.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Getting to Know Your Macs Extension Attributes. My name is Ernie Fulton. Currently with a Fortune 500 company, previously in higher education, but my Mac story starts back in middle school when Apple Tech took me and a few other students to learn how to troubleshoot the lab, and from then it's just been, one track since. So, Getting to Know Your Macs Extension Attributes. It's a nice pair. You want to know your data. You want to know your Macs. How are you going to do that? In Jamf Pro, a great feature is extension attributes. A good extension attribute provides a clear, unique value. Just want to take a quick second. I brought some stickers for everybody so that we can all have metadata to say that we went to the talk today. So if you can pass those around, that'd be great. All right, so what is an extension attribute? So I'm just going to apologize first, which is what you're not supposed to do in a talk, but I might say extended, and you might too. Other platforms use extended, kind of makes sense to be extended, but it really is extension. In Jamf Pro, it's extension. So an extension attribute allows you to define extra inventory information that's not already in Jamf Pro. It's the data you're looking for and the data you're going to source or provide that would not otherwise be in Jamf Pro. This data can be used in smart groups and advanced searches. This data can be passed into policies and configuration profiles. This is used in the patch management feature. There's a lot of great examples inside that if you're using it. And this has no relation to system, file, Safari, or network extensions. There we go. So what can have an extension attribute? You got the trio: computers, devices, and users. Users just get a text field and a pop-up menu option. Devices get a text field, pop-up menu, and LDAP attribution mapping. And computers, the deluxe package, text field, pop-up, directory service attribute mapping, and scripting. Sorry. One of the key things about extension attributes is you need to think about it in terms of a source of truth. How will this data be defined? Where are you getting this? You need to think about that when it comes to your criteria later on. You're either providing it as a Jamf Pro user through the web console or maybe the API, or you're pulling this value from a script running on your Mac. All right, let's go through making extension attribute. This feels dated already. I have no idea how it's going to work in Jamf Pro 11. Excited to find out. But today, you can go to Settings, Computer Management, and Extension Attributes. We're going to go over the computer portion. It's basically the same with devices and users. You just swap that computer management portion out for user and device management. So let's make one. The biggest thing you're going to notice on that blank screen is you'll have your list of extension attributes, but at the top, let's make a new one. The new is just a blank form. You're going to make it your own. I prefer this. I think that in this process of making extension attribute, it needs to be a bit thoughtful, a little bit manual. Using new from template, you can use some great examples that are already built in, get some great ideas about how to use script, where data could come from. You can upload a template, get that from the Jamf marketplace, perhaps somewhere else on the web, I don't know. So when you go to new, this is what you're going to see, okay? Note that checkbox. That's pretty big, because if you make a script, that goes to everything. We'll get to that. So let's fill out a form together. Field's great. All right, let's go to the display name. This is pretty important. This is what you're going to look up later. It should be a clear and unique value. It shouldn't be confusing. It shouldn't provide double negatives later on. It should be something that is in a list of criteria, something that's very, very easy to understand. Because you might make this now in a rush of finding stuff on the internet. I need to know this, but later on, you want to have a nice, reliable data point. Don't use something already in Jamf Pro. It doesn't really error out, but it makes it confusing later on when you're looking for fields. In your description, explain your intentions and goals, okay? You're trying to get to know your Macs. You're trying to understand what you want. You're applying values, getting values. What's the goal of this? Why do you want to know what you're doing? This is not particularly searchable, so don't put anything that you need to know. So that's why a display name is really important. Make it something you can search. All right, the data type. String is most common. It uses the operators is not, not like, matches regex, or not. Integer, it's going to be a whole number, best for less than, greater than, equal to. Date, one of my favorites. Evaluate the time before, after, this many days, before or after. Note time zones. If you're using Jamf Cloud, they use UTC. Your Macs are probably not in UTC. So take that what you will. The date, if you need to format this in a script, that's the way to modify the output, so it will match that format. All right. Next is going to ask you to where do you want to put this in inventory? So you get general, hardware, operating system, user location, purchasing, and extension attributes. My favorite place is to put it in extension attributes, because extension attributes are not what Jamf provides you. You will know what you made and what Jamf made. It makes it nice and easy and clear, because extension attributes are going to live for a long time. They need to be reliable, understandable, and clear. If you are making extension attributes for user-specific data, particularly for devices that really does just have a primary user, I love to put it right there in user and location. They have a nice little subheading for extended attributes. Okay. The next is input type. Like we talked about what you get in each mode, I'm going to leave the LDAP and directory stuff out. That's a bit, you would have to have such things to move things, and that's a bigger talk. But the text field, that's anything goes. It's best to keep that short and easy to evaluate. Again, you're going to need to evaluate this to make it useful later when you're setting criteria for scope in smart groups or advanced searches. So you might want to cram in a bunch of data. That's great if you can break it down later. Pop-up menu. You just want to set what you're going to get, make it easy for your Jamf Pro users, make it easy for what the options are going to be. Script, and that's of course pure magic. All right, let's go over some examples. And I want you guys to think about what you really want out of your Macs, what information would be nice to have. What do you think you're getting something that you want to know something about, but if you only knew that detail, that little bit of information. So this example, we're going to use a pop-up. You can do standby or retired. Say the Mac might not be long for this world, or production cycle, excuse me, avoid the default state of active, okay? Anything that's a default state, like where it should be, like this is what you're expecting, that just creates bad data later on. You know, it's just like everything's fine, nothing to worry about, while you have every other indicator that something is wrong. So you're here to define, excuse me again, define the outliers to target, okay? You're looking for what makes those Macs unique. All right, some more examples. Here are things you can put in. You can do something like your accounting information, cost center, fiscal year, the really odd stuff that you get in your queries that you're trying to like, man, it'd be great if I just had this as something to define later on. Location data that's really specific, something like floor, the row, the classroom, you know, the data center, the rack, you know, something more, something very descriptive, something where you can check against it and really know what's going on with that Mac. You put the use of that device, something like loaner, contractor, you know, maybe test unit, whatever it is, just set something to make it a different Mac from every other Mac that's in your Jamf Pro. You can also do update rings, whatever you want to call it. Preview, beta, insiders, alpha, ring 0, whatever. All right, some more examples. You could license software potentially. You can just make that a target. You could say, true, license this software. You could set an expiration date or a start date that a license should happen. That's data that you can pass back and forth. All right, something on the user side. This is something that have been useful to me is putting a creation date if I'm making a local Jamf Pro user. Your data retention policy on your Jamf Pro might be 30 days, might be longer, who knows. But you want a value that's going to stand time, especially if you have to use that later for an audit. You can label developers or beta testers or techs or something to give extra abilities to your users. And you can potentially provide things that you might not want to provide an admin, but you could provide with a special access to a Jamf user. All right. All this comes with caveats. With great power comes great caveats. There's plenty of pitfalls. Extension attributes are not part of the inventory preload template. Just if you don't know what that is, it's a great little CSV that you can download from Jamf Pro, pull that data down, fill it in with the information you want. So if you want to pair a serial number with a user right away, that's great. You can't add the rest of the extensions onto that. Deleting an extension attribute deletes the ID number. That's foreshadowing. String data is just a single line, and all of that's inside an XML tag. So returning the data to the Mac will be done as a system instead of a local user. It's kind of a weird thing, but it happens. But just realize that everything that happens on extension attributes, for the most part, well, always really, yes, is going to be the Jamf Pro service account. If you're switching users, something like that, you know you'll be doing that. So let's talk about scripting, but let's think about it in this term of reaction time. An extension attribute script is like communicating with a satellite orbiting Mars. Okay? The script is run during inventory. It's part of a list of scripts and extension attributes and everything else that runs at Recon. It's now part of a bigger system. All right. So here's my bits of advice. If you already make scripts and you're amazing at it, thank you for being here. I hope you get something more. But if you don't, let's go over it. Let's keep it simple. You're just here for one little bit of data. If you're going to add more and more extension attributes over time, that's just more runtime that happens at Recon. It's not part of declarative management, so that's a bit of a new thing. But just know that you're not going to get that data any other time other than Recon, unless that changes too. So once the script is active, I talked about that checkbox. A script runs on everything. So the cautionary tale is, if you're hunting the internet for the data you want or the script you need, and you just copy and paste and post it into everything, it goes on everything. So test the script first on your local device before you send it out there. If you're unsure, as you're filling out that new form, uncheck that box. Because extension attributes make scope, so they run on everything. They define what gets filtered down. Again, the goal of the script is just to return an XML tag. That's it. It's just the result for that one item. So let's talk about a scripting workflow, how I work, and if you can add something or subtract something from what you're doing, kind of do it purposefully. So let's start up with a text editor of your choice. Let's have a terminal window nearby. If you made a lot of modifications to your terminal window, especially aliases and things to do cool things, just understand that's not really what the Jamf Pro service account is going to do, okay? It gets the basic stuff, arguably less than that. So once we're done making what we need to make, we're going to save that with a sh file extension. Make that script executable with chmod u plus x. That means that it's going to be executable to the user. That's important because if you, say, light up that script using, say, bash or Z shell and then call the script, whatever you have at the top of the script defining it, how it should run, will change. And then you might not get what you expect as its result. And once this goes live and you need to figure out why things have gone wrong, you can go through the Jamf Recon, add that switch to it for save form 2, and put it to the path that you want, and you'll get your gigantic XML that Jamf Recon would send up to Jamf Pro, but you can see it there. All right, here's a basic script pattern. Again, you want it to be basic. If you want more data out of it, ask for more data. So at the top, you're going to define what shell you're going to use. I like Z shell. That's what Apple has gone to. They're going to continue development with it. Bash is great. But what you're going to see now and going forward, most of the examples online for Bash are going to be Linux-based, and that shell is growing and evolving with its features. Put in a useful description. It's great if this matches the goal and intent and your thoughts and what you want, so that when you put it into that form, it's clear that you pasted the right thing into the right box. Let's define what you're going to provide back as a result first thing, because if your logic fails, you won't know, because it will return nothing. So you'll just know that it ran, the logic failed, and it returned something. I like unknown. Whatever works with your display name, whatever kind of makes sense, right? You want it to be clear, understandable. Let's avoid double negatives. Let's avoid things that might confuse what you're asking for. And so in this case, we're just asking for our special app that we provide. If it exists, great. Let's run it to get the version. Let's assume that's the switch, and make that the result variable, and then we can echo result. I like putting exit in, basically unnecessary, but if you're copying and pasting code as being thoughtful, because this stuff goes to everything, it lets you know when the bottom of the line is, okay? Let you know you have everything. Be good to yourself on this. Again, this is code you're just pushing into production all the time. Okay, so let's go over some more little variables and things. Define the script, again. You should do that. You probably have Z shell picking it up by default. If you want it to be something else, then declare it as such. Scripts in other languages are possible. I'm not going to go over that because it fits the same need of it has to be on every machine, and it has to be the version you need on every machine. So if you're using it, that's fine. There's completely valid and great examples in Python, Ruby, whatever. Or if you're going to copy that inside of the conditional to say, if this version of the scripting language or language that I want is existing, then run it, okay? Then call it. But if it's particularly big, if it's a heavy piece of code, my recommendation is don't make an extension attribute out of it. An extension attribute is just a small value in an XML tag, okay? If you want something more, make it a policy from a script in Jamf Pro. Install it on the Mac. Schedule it with a launch daemon. Make that data filter up into a quick and easy plist that's on the system, or an easy log, something that is, when it gets evaluated, is in and out quick. You don't want to go and deep dive in like system profiler. You don't want to like search every log. You just want something quick and easy. All right, some more stuff. Don't expect an error code or helpful message out of your script. It's not going to happen. It's not looking for that. Again, a failed script clears the field. So if you thought it had something and then it went bad, let's say that data, your conditional didn't work, you don't get what you wanted, then you clear that data out. And if that is something related to the scope and working system that you need to have, that will break things. So always use full paths. If it's not just, Jamf, it's going to be the full path for Jamf. Test locally and test often. Triple check. Again, once you put it out there, it goes to production to every machine. Broken scripts can slow down the whole recon process. If you're going to use a loop or something like that, don't make it an infinite loop. Give it a time. Give it an iteration max. Give it something to say, I get it. 5 times is enough. We're done. Okay? Be wary of curl and other web-based commands. There are really, really great, clever examples that I've seen on GitHub on the web. But if you're asking the Mac to know where it is on the internet, unless that's really what you want to know, getting a 404 or worse answer out of it is not great. All right. So when you're going through this, filter with the command that you have. A lot of times it's going to help you get a really nice, easy answer. Otherwise, if you call a command, it's going to give you like a long table. You don't want to scope that out with things like grep, awk, or regex. I'm personally allergic to regex. Makes me uncomfortable. How many other folks have issues with regex? Anybody? All right. I mean, it makes total sense, except when it doesn't. So understand user context. You're probably going to see examples out there where you can switch user or use the logged in active user. Just understand the context. If it's a lab that goes through a lot of users, if it's not like a really primary device, if it's not going to be the same user every time, the data you get back from that could change wildly, and that might mean that your scope and your criteria might break. If you're searching into the user's folder, just be wary, there's monsters there. Basically, your testing is going to work great because you're a user, but the Jamf Pro service account is not. All right. Here's a little tactic that I use to say, well, what if the local user wants to do something else? What if they need something? What if they need to chime in? Let's give them an easy button, okay? So put a policy in self-service. It's going to write a value to a plist, so they can get some action. They can get some scope. In this case, we're going to use defaults, write, library preferences, com.yourcompany, whatever feature you're going to do, enable 1, that means true. You can make it whatever you need to make it, but you're just making it a button, so let's make it a button so its value goes up. And then in your script that you're making for your extension attribute, where you would evaluate that, you're going to do make that result variable user bin defaults read and check what that enable value is. It'll read true, 1, however you're going to evaluate what you're going to make, and then boom, they're into that extension attribute value, and whatever scope you've defined, if you then give them policies that they needed, licensed software, whatever it is, there you go. All right. It's a bigger talk. There's API talks and things like that, but I know you want to search after what we're doing here. Making extension attribute really comes from what data you want to know of your Macs, okay? Like what do you want to know? It's that. You're being asked questions in your organization. Who has what? Is this installed? Is this thing here? There's great tools already in Jamf Pro. You can get application inventory. You can get usage inventory, but you're going to find there's going to be weird files, other places that might report back that are not applications, things that might have been left over from an installer. Did that get removed? So you're going to specifically look for things. Think about that. You're getting to know your Mac. Let's break it down. And again, it's extension attributes, computer extension attributes. This is more for me. Mobile device extension attributes, user extension attributes. It reads really well in that API, so they broke it up in the future version, which at the moment is just mobile device extension attributes preview, which I don't know if that's actually true. I haven't looked at all the Jamf Pro 11 stuff yet. All right, if you're going to use this in configuration profile or policy used to pass this back to the Mac in your actions, extension attribute, underscore, and the extension attribute ID number, okay? Well, $ before that. In a configuration profile, you're just calling that plainly. In your policy script, it's basically the same thing, but just note the single ticks, okay? You're gonna add it to a policy script or run it, you know, in the scripting section down there. All right, so references. You've gotten the clear lay of the land of extension attributes. You know what you do. You know that you need to know more things about your Mac. You're being asked, you want to know. You've seen some great examples online. You know that you need to add more data to your Macs. So I'd like to thank Bill Smith, AKA Talking Moose. Great talk where he takes inventory data and extension attributes and apply those back to the Mac. It's a good talk from JNUC 2021, and the entire Jamf documentation on this is available at that QR code. All right, Q&A time. What's your favorite extension attribute? If you're already using them, it's some pretty amazing stuff. My favorites are generally time-based things. I use one where I pull the last changed password for the local user, kind of give those folks that have just 7 days left a buffer before we push software updates. You know, if they can't log in after that, if they're going to push off their password update change, they're going to push off the software updates, and then they're going to find out that they get locked out, and that's never a good time. So you can add a buffer to that. All right. Did everyone get a sticker? If not, I've got some more here, and there's plenty to pass around. Okay, with that.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ernie. It was a great talk. We have a few questions. Remember, the questions are going to be in the JNUC app. Since we have people online, I will read them out. So I'm going to start with the first one here from Don Montalvo. You mentioned the Jamf service account. Is that account still used or needed since Jamf Remote was sunset and since most of us are randomizing the account's password?
So it's however policy is getting pushed down to Jamf, and I'm not a Jamf employee, so with absolute definition I can't say, but it is run in a context of a user that is not something that you would necessarily have access to. It's listed in your Jamf Pro general information of which account is servicing it. Right, and generally that is the root user. I do work for Jamf, so I think it is the root user runs the recon and the scripts. Yes. So another scripting question here. Does the extension attribute only read the first echo line with the XML tag result information result, or can you have multiple echo lines with multiple result tags? No. Extension attributes are one line. If you want more data out of something and the data you're getting back is coming back differently, that's where you got to use the grep and the awk and the regex magic to recombine that data and put it into one line and put some sort of like delimiter between all that. If it breaks down more than that, again, just adding another extension attribute is really what you want. Excellent. What steps would you take when you realize an extension attribute is causing recon to hang indefinitely, but only for some computers? Right. If it's for those computers, I would go back to where I put the save, is a save form 2 and that XML path, and get that XML export and see what's happening at that point. Treat that as the log.
All right, do we have questions in the room? We've got a couple more online, but for people that don't want to use the app in the room, just raise your hand and we'll get those questions answered too. Go ahead.
What's the use case for that extension attribute from a local user where you said you're giving them input?
Sure.
Yeah. Do you want to repeat the question quick?
So he asked, what's the use case when you have a user have a button that gives them a value? I've used it for things like, hey, you want to be an early adopter for the next version of Mac OS? That's your pilot button, okay? That adds them into a pilot group. You can say, I'm requesting access to a license for this. Please make that available to me. Anything that they might want IT request for that has a very good automated process too, like they just need to be added to the group and there's no friction to that. That's just the quick button that I use for that.
All right, one that has a couple of votes here. Can you please remind people not to add a recon command in your extension attribute script? It will break things.
That's a very good point. Yes, that I don't know how far that inception recursion would go, but yes, don't run recon when it's running recon. That's a good point I didn't even think about.
All right, another one in the room at all?
It's not so much a question.
Yeah.
It's a response to what is your favorite extension attribute.
Yes.
I use a file at the end of my computer setup process to denote whether or not a device has completed enrollment.
Great.
And so I use that so that anything that should kick off automatically doesn't until they're marked as enrolled.
Right. So what he said is he uses a file at the end of enrollment that marks the end of enrollment. And so once that is discovered, then their actions are complete, basically?
Yeah,
Or it triggers off everything else?
Yeah, and anything that should, start if something's missing doesn't until that process is complete.
Great. So that's basically like it's the not enrollment complete, but basically onboarding complete kind of thing.
Exactly.
Great.
Cool.
That's a good
Here's one from online. In your example using values of retired and standby, you mentioned we should not use an expected value like active.
Right.
What should you use instead, or how do you handle that?
So you can leave the value blank. You can just leave it alone, because what you're going to use in your criteria in, say, a smart group that you're going to scope something, you're only going to look for, retired devices. You're going to exclude them or add them to something. If it's active, it's ready, then what you're doing is making a delay, because that only gets run so often, or you set it so often, or if somebody forgets to turn it off, then your value is going to be bad over time. You're going to get, days or weeks or months before you realize, no, that's not actually true. So it again, you're looking to make good targets for your smart groups and searches.
Awesome. Here's another question about the EAs that blocked recon entirely, either because of an obvious error in the script or a rare bug in Mac OS tools they were using, and it didn't show up in testing, but they've pushed it out to production. Do you have any recommendations to avoid blocking recon?
I think it will eventually time out. But as far as making, if you're asking for something, you want to provide those conditionals in your script that check for a sane environment first. Okay? If you're doing something that adds a loop to it, if you're, you want to know exactly where and how long that search for that data should take, and if it takes longer than that, exit out of that script.
Cool. Do we have other questions in the room?
Whatever.
What is your recommendation for the longest runtime for a script? So when should I begin thinking about moving it to a policy instead of using an extension attribute directly?
I would say as you're making it in testing, if it seems to have any pause at all as you're going through it, like if it just seems like it's not right away, I would at that point consider it, because over time you're going to build a ton of extension attributes and it just compounds. And if you use the patch management feature, especially for a lot of software, they're all doing the same thing. So you don't want to be item like 85 asking for like 20 seconds or so when you're going there. Again, if it's any deeper than just like a quick query from a plist or a file or something like that, then consider moving that to a policy, especially if you might want that data more often or put that policy's trigger to get that data more often.
All right, we have one really specific question that I don't know that we'll be able to answer, but do you know if you can use an extension attribute to query the battery life for Apple Silicon Mac?
Oh, man.
Really specific.
Uh-huh.
Probably have to Google that one.
That is something that I've had trouble with also. So I don't know if it's a thing yet. I think that what I've kind of seen as a potential option is there might be a program that can query that from programming, not like a value that you can get out of scripting, and then have that output somewhere else. So you're making a requirement that that app is there. You would check for that. You would be installing that app, and then check for that. But other than that, no, it's not a really good data point right now.
All right. Question about running as root. Since EAs are run as root, how would you recommend testing the script in your user terminal? I don't believe sudo alone gives you a root equivalent environment.
True. I guess it kind of comes down to what are you asking for that you need such a deep level that's not just like in the system or user space. If it's something deeper than that, I would protect it with some other policy or method to get that data in general. If it's more than that, where you would have to like switch user locally in testing, you might just run into some complications. Again, it's thinking a bit outside of yourself.
Other things in the room? All right, oh, there's one.
I want to turn the question back to you. What's your favorite or most valuable extension attribute you use in your environment?
So the question is, what's Ernie's most favorite extension attribute in his environment?
Yeah, I would say again, it's going to be the time-based stuff about when a user changed a password, when something was last run, when these values are there, because it gives me context about like when things fell off, right? Because it's one thing where you're going to get inventory every so often, but if it's not getting used or not being run in a certain way, and you start to see those dates trail off, or something else, it gives you, I would say, log-like values using the dates. So if you can just tag whatever you're looking for, especially if it's something like that, dates are really great. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, we're going to wait for awkward silence because that's when the questions really come out.
Yeah. Great.
All right, thanks, Ernie.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the rest
Thank
of
you,
your-
guys.